Simpson Comanche Jack Stillwell, though less famous than figures like Buffalo Bill Cody or Wild Bill Hickok, stood out in his time for acts that resonated across the western frontier. His reputation gained strength after 1868 at the Battle of Beecher Island, where he demonstrated unquestionable bravery, earning respect among those who witnessed those harsh conflicts. Bill Doolin became widely known in the Oklahoma Territory, beginning his criminal career as a member of the Dalton Gang, famed for their robberies and clashes with the law. His notoriety expanded considerably after he survived, uninjured, a violent armed confrontation in Coffeyville. The image in question, a cabinet card, records the fatal end of Doolin's criminal career. By the age of 18, John Wesley Hardin was already widely known for the violence of his acts in a Texas marked by tensions and conflicts. This image, taken in 1871, perpetuates the young man who, in the following years, would secure his place in history as one of the greatest gunslingers of the Old West. At the time of his death in 1895, Hardin had been charged with anywhere between 27 and 42 killings, reaffirming his feared reputation. This albumen print constitutes a fundamental document of an era when maintaining order in the Old West faced significant challenges. Dated to around 1900, it depicts Pinkerton Agency detectives in their actions to capture the notorious Wild Bunch gang. On the left side of the photograph is Charlie Siringo, a former cowboy who worked in Texas and the New Mexico Territory, whose experience greatly contributed to his investigative practice. This cabinet card, photographed at an unknown date, was produced at the Pawnee Gallery in Pawnee. The portrait documents a period in which the Oklahoma Territory sparked opposing views and uncertainties about its future. In 1896, the Guthrie Daily Leader newspaper reflected this sentiment by declaring that nothing good exists or can arise from Oklahoma. Roy Bean, shown in this cabinet card around 1895, emerged as a notable figure of the Old West during America's expansion. Styling himself the law west of the Pecos, he carried out judicial duties in his own saloon in Texas, where he issued sentences informally and sometimes questionably. His reputation was cemented by the unusual, often arbitrary rulings that became part of local folklore. In this photograph, dated August 18, 1868, we see Satanta, a prominent Kiowa leader, wearing a peace medal possibly received during the negotiations that led to the Medicine Lodge Treaty in 1867. The historically significant record helps reveal the complex nature of interactions between indigenous peoples and the U.S. government, highlighting both the agreements established and the tensions underlying the era. Frank Randall, recognized as a documentarian of the U.S. frontier regions, achieved distinction by being among the first to photograph Chiricahua Apache leader Geronimo. In 1884, while at the San Carlos Reservation in the Arizona Territory, Randall produced a series of photographs showcasing the determined figure of the indigenous chief, including this historically significant portrait. In March 1886, the photographer C.S. Fly, then based in Tombstone in what was then the Arizona Territory, followed General George Crook of the U.S. Army on a significant expedition across the Mexican border. The images Fly captured during this episode are widely viewed as important historical sources. Among them is a photograph depicting men, women, and children of the Chiricahua Apache tribe. George Armstrong Custer, a notable cavalry officer who provoked intense debate, appears in this cabinet card photograph taken by photographer William Howell in New York in April 1876. The portrait predates by roughly 2 months the fatal outcome at the Battle of Little Bighorn, where Custer and his troops faced their final defeat, making this record of great historical importance. McCubbin, a dedicated scholar and collector of old photographic records with verified provenance, faces a curious question regarding a specific image in his collection. So far, no official link has been established to prove that the photograph actually depicts Buckskin Frank Leslie. However, based on careful comparative analysis involving a previously authenticated portrait of the same individual, McCubbin remains convinced that it is indeed him. The first historical photograph acquired by McCubbin shows Pat Garrett, then Sheriff of Lincoln County, famed for his participation in local conflicts, culminating in the Lincoln County War, and for becoming one of the most remembered figures of the Old West. Garrett gained notoriety by capturing and, on July 14, 1881, killing the infamous outlaw Billy the Kid, securing his place in the history of the American frontier. Lola Montez, a renowned 19th century figure, gained fame for her energetic spider dance. In 1853, when she arrived in California, this performance achieved widespread notoriety, stirring public curiosity and spurring various accounts. The choreography, marked by provocative movements and intense rhythm, captivated the audience and fueled rumors about her lifestyle. At 20 years of age, John Henry Holliday achieved a remarkable feat by graduating in 1872 from the Pennsylvania College of Dental Surgery, at a time when few practiced dentistry. This portrait, one of the few adult images of him, was taken before he rose to prominence in the Old West. Renowned for his skill with firearms, Holliday would become notable for his role in the 1881 gunfight behind the OK Corral in Tombstone. Identified as the New Mexico Rustlers, they appear in a cabinet card photograph dated to around 1880. Historical research suggests that the individual pictured could be John Kinney, recognized leader of a gang specializing in the theft of horses and cattle in the New Mexico Territory during the 1870s and 1880s. The Texas Rangers, acknowledged as the first integrated and official police force in the United States, trace their origins back to the period of the Republic of Texas, when the territory was self-governed before joining the country. In 1874, an institutional milestone was reached with the establishment of the Frontier Battalion, composed of 6 Texas Ranger companies, strengthening territorial security. James Butler Wild Bill Hickok, recognized as the pioneering and most famous gunslinger of the Old West, rose to prominence in 1865 when he took part in a landmark duel with Dave Tutt. This direct confrontation became a milestone, setting a precedent for later shootouts depicted in cinematic works. A photograph from around 1865 captured this pivotal episode. The 1887 photograph by John Grable shows a cowboy identified in copyright records as Fred Pierce, a Wyoming cowboy. Although his mention in documents suggests a certain notoriety, Fred Pierce's existence remains unproven, as the 1880 Wyoming census does not record him. While carrying out an arrest warrant against Andy Cooper, a known horse thief from Holbrook in the Arizona Territory, County Sheriff Commodore Perry Owens became involved in a gunfight. During the shootout, which unfolded amid high tension, Owens faced 3 men, Andy Cooper and the brothers Samuel and John Blevins, who were killed in the altercation. Bat Masterson, a one-time scout for the U.S. Army, gained fame as a strict and effective sheriff. He held profound respect for Wyatt Earp, a central figure of the Old West, and informed President Theodore Roosevelt that only Earp possessed the clarity needed to accurately tell the story of events on the American frontier. This image, dated to around 1850, shows an individual whose identity remains unknown to history. The daguerreotype, noted for its rarity, portrays a frontier man of mixed heritage, possibly linked to the Metis community, known for merging indigenous and European traditions. This daguerreotype, dated to around 1850, is among the earliest images depicting a fur trapper, identifying James P. Beckwourth. Later, the photograph was reprinted in his biography, first published in 1856. Born in 1778 in Virginia, Beckwourth was the son of an enslaved woman and an Irish overseer. While buffalo hunting played an important role in the economy and culture of the North American Old West, photographic records of hunters remain rare. Among the few exceptions is this cabinet card, dated to around 1880, depicting a hunter posing with his Sharps rifle, a weapon closely associated with that practice. The attempted bank robbery in Northfield, Minnesota, orchestrated by the notorious James Younger gang, is among the notable criminal events of the Old West. After the participants were apprehended, carte de visite photographs, a widely used format at the time, were produced to document both the detainees and, in some instances, those who had died during the incident. In Tombstone, in what was then the Arizona Territory, Samantha Fallon stood out as a businesswoman, owning the San Jose House Hotel and a millinery shop. Her likeness is preserved in a cabinet card by C.S. Fly, dated to around 1879. Fallon solidified her influence both in commercial endeavors and through personal connections with significant figures of the era. During negotiations in March 1886 between General George Crook and Geronimo, a significant episode in the conflict between the United States and the Apaches, photographer C.S. Fly recorded a noteworthy scene. At that time, an Apache man was photographed wearing a three-piece suit, an attire unusual compared to his people's traditional clothing. The obituary of John Wesley Hardin, famed as a Texas outlaw, was written succinctly and bluntly. John Wesley Hardin, the renowned Texas outlaw, is no longer among us. The announcement came after the events of 1895, when Deputy John Selman killed Hardin at the Acme Saloon in El Paso, Texas. The last known photograph of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, renowned outlaws of the Old West, dates to around 1907. The image was taken in the Bolivian Andes, a setting distinct from the wide prairies and urban centers that marked the earlier phases of their activity. This photograph of John Simpson Chisholm, a key cattleman known as the Cattle King, was reproduced in The Story of the Outlaw, a 1907 work by Emerson Howe. Active since 1854, Chisholm partnered with Charles Goodnight and Oliver Loving in 1866, and together they drove large herds of cattle into the New Mexico Territory. Historically, the Apache Kid is recognized as an enigmatic figure, whose affiliation with the Southwestern Apaches has sparked controversy. Initially, he stood out as a competent and reliable scout for the U.S. Army. However, a series of conflicting events and differing interpretations eventually led him off the official path, resulting in his being labeled a fugitive.